Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know how, is the sound okay? We weren't sure, yeah? Okay, awesome. Yes, thank you for inviting me down again. It's wonderful to speak with Jill in regards to making something happen and the dates and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad we weren't too sure how many people were going to show up. So I'm glad there's more than half a dozen. And that half a dozen would have been Jill, myself, Carrie Ann, and Julia. So that would have been 4 and 2 other people. So we weren't too sure who was going to show up on a Saturday afternoon. So perfect. Yeah, I'm really glad you have the same type of weather we do. We were here yesterday, nice balmy weather, and then wake up to snow on the truck. And I'm like, really? This is exactly like Thunder Bay. This is perfect. I'm in my own country here, so this is great. So yeah, I'll bring you through a few things. Oh, we have sound too. So a little dramatics there, a little bit of a blue whale breaching.
How many times the length of your boat is that width?
Quite a few. So the boat, yeah, probably 3 or 4 maybe, something like that. So the boat, what I'll bring you through, because I know, well, now I know for sure how many people were here last time compared to today. So what I'll do is I'll bring you quickly through a few things that we went over last time, but it has to do with the build of the boat, the North Atlantic crossing prior to the race, and then obviously the Class Globe 580 qualifier and the transatlantic race called the Transat, and the Class Globe 580 mini globe race. So we'll kind of zip through that. And then, oh yeah, what's next as well? I can't really see it because of the light on the screen, but then what's next after that? So let's get started. So my boat, Little B is the name, and I built the boat myself. I thought during COVID it'd be a good idea to do something productive as opposed to watching YouTube videos and Netflix and all that kind of stuff. So of course, why not just build a boat? So I was one of the first builders to start, hull number 20, and I started building before the kit came out. So the kit first was offered actually in the US, I think it was North Carolina, B&B Yachts. They did a 3D model of the boat, and then they end up selling the kits, the CNC kits. So you could have bought those, but I was already partway into the build already. So I built from plans. So my trade background, I'm a machinist. So using drawings like this is something I do all the time. And so this is basically what the boat started out with. It was just some drawings on the wall, and off we go. So a couple of shots of the boat that's basically the shell of the boat. You can kind of see most of it. Built it in my garage during 2020 and launched 15 months later in August of 2021. And I think that's the shot of it the day it launched. And I sailed it for a month or 2 on Lake Superior that year. And then all the next year, and then the following year, I took off and did something else. So this, you might notice, that's a shot of Thompson Island and Silver Islet race. I did the Silver Islet race, came dead last. I realized that this boat is not built for Lake Superior. It's purposely built for the ocean and downwind trade wind, 20, 30 knots of wind is perfect for it. So, but I did finish the race, so that was the main thing. So one of the things I did, and I wasn't really sure about all this, I've always only sailed on Lake Superior, and I had no prior ocean experience except for maybe in the Caribbean, maybe on a catamaran, 70-foot booze cruise or something like that. So I didn't really want to dive into waving this flag saying I'm going to do this race. And I've never sailed on the ocean before, especially with this little boat. So what I did is I decided to, of course, let's just sail the thing across the ocean. So through 2023, I took off from Nova Scotia. I trailered the boat from Thunder Bay to Nova Scotia. Met up with some great people that helped me, with a bunch of different things, logistics and helping out getting the boat ready. And I just basically set off. Casted the lines and took off into the ocean. This here, I'll mention why this is like it is in a moment, but that was my track going across, made a lovely stop in the Azores. Highly recommend that place. My good friend Morgan Ellis, he was helping me along the way, as well as some other people, some other builders that I built the boat with, other builders throughout the world. And this other guy, I don't know if he's listed. Yeah, Edward. Edward, he was a Golden Globe racer, if you ever heard of that race. So Don McIntyre, he was the organizer of our race, but he also runs the Golden Globe race, which is a retro 1968-69 technology, up to 36-foot boats, nonstop, solo, unassisted, around the world. And he's run 2 of them. He's running another race coming up, and Edward was one of them. And he's actually entered, he's one of 2 or one of 3 Canadians in the race coming up in the fall, the other Golden Globe race. So anyways, it was good to have those people behind me. This is my point. There he is there. I forgot that was a picture of him. So it worked out really well. Good guy. Kept in contact with him a lot. And this was one of the shots. I don't know if it's going to show it very well. But as you know, when you take pictures of waves and stuff, it never really shows exactly what it looks like. But that was an idea of, and you can kind of get a feel for the motion of the boat. I call it a dynamic boat. And if I didn't say it earlier, it's 19 feet long and the beam is 7'4", I think. And the total weight is, well, with, you know, some water and a few things like that, is around 2,200 pounds. Yeah. Let's just go across the ocean. I decided I wanted to get my feet wet in terms of, you know, figuring out whether I really want to do this at all anymore. And the idea was that being in Europe, it'd be the best place for the boat to be in terms of if I ever wanted to sell it, or that's actually where the start line is for the race. So it's one of those 2 things were going to happen. And throughout the months after I come home, we decided that this was going to be a good idea. And me and 14 others thought it was a good idea in the world out of 8 billion people to sail 19-foot boats around the world. So back to the first Atlantic crossing, sometimes the weather gets really crappy. At the time, I didn't even realize what I was taking a picture of, but it's kind of dark and you can't really see it well, but there's a system here, a weather system. And I didn't even realize what it was. I thought it was actually rain coming down that was a lot closer, but it was this system that was 600 miles in diameter. And it was a tropical depression named Dawn, and it was traveling on a northwestward passage at 12 knots, and that little green dot is me. So that dog leg in the track that I showed you, that was me coming north, or coming south, and then once I got south of it, then I took off east again. So that's what that was, yeah, 100 knot. I did another presentation, I had to change it from knots, from miles per hour. But anyway, so yeah, that was what that picture was back further. And that was heading like this along here, which is not very normal. And tropical depression, if you know much about those, and hurricanes, they can stop and then start going back the other way, or start going this way, or start going this way. So it was good to have those people in satellite contact so that I can, you know, plan my route properly, because I didn't have any direct internet. I didn't have any Starlink or anything like that. I just had a Zoleo texting device. So it was all texting back and forth, you know, okay, what's going on, weather systems. And what they did is they gave me the GPS coordinates of the system and the progress over the next 3 days. And I plotted it on my chart plotter so I could see where the storm was moving. And then I saw those photos later. And it was like, maybe I didn't want to see those, you know. So anyways, that was my track at that point. That's a couple shots from the Azores. I'd highly recommend it. I'd probably want to, if I had the choice, I'd go there before I went to the Caribbean. Honestly, beautiful. Stuff like this, beautiful black beaches. People are amazing, and it's fairly inexpensive. Yeah, so that brings me to the Class Globe. Class Globe is the name of the boat, if I didn't say that earlier. It's a hand-built boat, as I did, and there's builders all over the world building the same boats. There's people building right now that are maybe going to do a Transat or an MGR or something like that. And at the time when I was building with 4 or 5 other guys. and they were getting ready to do the Transat in 2021. And then I launched my boat. I was actually the first builder to launch after the founder, and got my boat in the water. Those 5 other guys did the Transat, and I launched and sailed in Lake Superior. I think right now they're up to about 320 or 310 boats, or plans sold anyways. I think there's already 20 or 25 entered for the Transat this fall. And then the mini globe race that's going to happen, the next edition is 2029. And there's supposed to be 6 or 8 people that are already entered for that. So it's gaining momentum, I guess, being that type of class. Some people are building, some people are buying boats that have been sailed already. So yeah. So the Transat, to do a Transat, you have to do a pre-qualifier. I had already done my pre-qualifier by sailing across the ocean already, but we started in Lagos to do a qualifier, and the qualifier was 600 miles to Lanzarote, which, looking back, didn't seem all that much, but I mean, that's 2 Trans-Superiors if you've done a Trans-Superior before. But it's different type of sailing as well, right? But it's overnight, solo, all that kind of good stuff. And I ended up on the pre-qualifier. I think I came in 3rd, which was a super exciting race. Myself and the girl from Spain, she went down the east or the west side of the island, and I went down the east side, and we both were coming along like this. And it's the same thing, just like out on the lake, where she got into a lull, and I picked up some breeze, and I was going, it was back and forth. Over 600 miles, she beat me by an hour and a half. It's just like crazy. But it was so much fun because I could see her on the tracker. We had YB3 trackers, and updated every 4 hours. So I also had Iridium Go exec. So I had some internet connection, but I was able to see her on the tracker every 4 hours. So that was pretty cool. So I ended up 3rd in that, and then we did the Transat, which is from Lanzarote to Antigua, so about 3,000 miles. So that was 6, and then about 3,000 miles to get to Antigua. Cape Verde, we ended up closer to Cape Verde than this, I think. But I ended up 4th in that race, which I was pretty happy with. 23 days, 14 hours, I don't know, that was Dawn's thing, but I think it was 23 days and 10 hours or something like that. And I don't know how many people have done any racing on the ocean before, but it's different type of racing than here, obviously, than even a Trans-Superior. I'm just trying to put a grasp on it in terms of you get into this routine of, you get, the sun comes up and you have your breakfast and you do this, and, before you go to bed, you're checking the boat, you're looking in all the cubbies and making sure that nothing's leaking. And then, okay, you feel better that, the night is coming upon you. And then you sit in the cockpit and watch the stars and the Milky Way, and in this case, the North Star. And so you get into this routine of, and then it just becomes 23 days later, you arrive in Antigua. That's kind of the way it rolls. And at the same time, we were doing a bunch of other things. Part of the qualification of the race, we needed to do celestial navigation as well, which was new to me. I did have the sextant on the boat coming across the Atlantic the first time, but I really didn't know what I was doing. So I got some instruction from some others, and we did this big thing in Portugal with a guy from Australia who's like this awesome, he's actually Yachtmaster Ocean, who used to instruct for RYA, Royal Yachting Association. So he gave us a master class on the beach in Portugal, which was a lot of fun, but we only did latitude. So I still had to learn longitude. So I knew where I was like this. I knew Antigua was 17 degrees. What could go wrong? So, and I made it there actually, so it was all good. But 11 days in after Lanzarote, I lost my balance in the boat and landed and sat into the cockpit, which doesn't sound all that bad, but I sat on the block for the main sheet. and I ended up damaging my sciatica nerve. So I had sciatica. I never had sciatica problems before in my life until 11 days in. And then at that time, I was running like first for a little while, and then I dropped to second place. So it's a race. So there's still this racing thing going on. I'm semi-competitive. I wanted to do well, but it wasn't my end-all cure-all that I needed to win a race. But then my good friend Niels from the Netherlands passed me. And I was in third chugging along, but I ended up spending like 3 days down below and I didn't even go up and touch the sails, honestly. I was down below nursing my leg. I couldn't even move the leg. I was literally, if you had sciatica pain before, I was literally dragging my leg to get back out and still trying to do this damn celestial stuff. And so that part wasn't great. So 20 something days with sciatica problems. And yeah, so it wasn't a lot of fun. Yeah, I've never had nerve pain before. We had medic bags on the boat, so we had a full MSOS medic bag, and I phoned the doctor with the sat phone and all that kind of stuff. And believe it or not, we didn't have nerve blockers in the bag. All we had was like pain, regular pain. We had oxycodone. How do you say that? Yeah, the bad stuff. So I had some of those and a few tramadols and a few things like that, but no nerve blockers that really took the pain away until I got to Antigua. Saw a guy there. So we left, let me think here. So we left Portugal December 28th, 2024. And then we left Lanzarote, I think it was January the 28th, and then arrived in Antigua. Does that sound about right? Does that timing sound about right? Yeah. Yeah, so we left, this is January, end of January, we left Lanzarote. Yeah, 23 days. Yeah, so that's lots of fun. This is the crew that we started with. Neil, I'll use the pointer. Niels, he's the Dutch guy that passed me when I was in third. He only did the Transat, so his plan was only to do that. That's what he wanted to do. He built the boat as well, and then wanted to sail it across. And then he shipped it onto a ship freighter back to the Netherlands. So the rest of this bunch here, we were the ones that decided that going around the world was a great idea. So we all set off. So there's 14 of us in total. So quite a few there's 5 Aussies, 4 or 5 from the UK. Pilar was from Spain, Switzerland, Poland originally, living in Ireland. He was a great party guy. Myself, so a bunch of good guys. I was really concerned about the Aussies because, I mean, Aussies and Kiwis, they're the pretty damn good sailors. In this photo, this was taken in, this was in Lagos. And the one American guy didn't show up until Antigua. So there's one American, and in this picture, another Australian guy. Yeah. So that's the bunch. There's a bunch of us up there again in Lanzarote. This lady here, she was actually the one that got me a doctor's appointment in Antigua to get me some pain blockers and stuff like that. She was, I don't know, she just volunteered, and she would follow us around and help us with different things and take photos and just do whatever and kind of be a pain in the ass sometimes, but she was nice about it, and anyways. So one of the things I did do is I got my Canadian flag and I got different people to sign it. I didn't have it at the time when I came here, but it would have been nice to have some of your names and whatever on there. So she's decided to sign the flags. A lot of people were asking me about food and all kinds of stuff like that. Of course, I had my anti-scurvy devices on board, but mainly it was all freeze-dried food. Nuts, granola, anything that was sort of packaged and things like that. I have this newfound liking for sardines. If you ever go to Portugal, if you've ever been to Portugal and try their sardines, they're amazing, amazing. And the canned ones are pretty good too. But I ended up eating a can of sardines almost every day when I was sailing, because it's good protein and it's nice and compact and they last forever. So yeah, but mainly it was freeze-dried food, my coffee, granola in the morning, that sort of thing. and fresh fruit when we left different islands and stuff like that. Just a couple of shots. I think these photos were mainly from the qualifier, I think. A couple random shots. Cruise ship getting kind of close. Like that's probably like, I don't know, quarter mile away. Like he was pretty close. It actually worked out kind of good because I asked him about whether he could see me on the boat, right? That was an important piece. Make sure my radar reflector worked. We had the Active X, I think it was Active XS radar reflectors. So they actually send a ping to the radars. Ping's the same frequency as the radar. And the captain said that I looked like I was like 70 feet long on his, and I'm like, perfect. He says, but on your AIS, it shows 5.8 meters. I says, yes, it's 5.8 meters. And there's this big long pause. He says, it's not 58? I says, no, it's not 58 meters. Yeah, I ran into a couple people like that. They're like, it says 5.8 on the AIS. I says, no, that's true. So that's after us getting to Lanzarote. Couple just random photos, things like this. I kind of like this kind of stuff because there's probably going to be no other time that I'm in a 19-foot boat sailing towards Antigua and I'm 100 miles away. Stuff like that. As I said before, the waves really don't. I do have a couple of photos that give it some justice. Just realization. Me sailing very close to the Cape Verde Islands, stuff like that. Just kind of those moments that are hopefully will never go away in my mind. But many people were asking about pictures of the boat and stuff like that. And a good friend of mine, Tom, from Thunder Bay, he was like, well, do you have some pictures of your boat sailing and all that kind of stuff? I says, well, I'm the only one on the boat and there's no boats around me. So no, I don't. There's a very few actually. But I did have a couple. This is not my boat, obviously. This is Neil's boat. And this is the Dutch guy that passed me, the bugger. And this, you can kind of get a feel for this. This other guy took these photos, who was a professional photographer. He took like 500 photos of his boat during this passage. He was a coach boat for the rowers. So there's rowers that go across the ocean. They think that's a good idea too. They go from Cape Verde to Antigua. Anyways, he was out there with a bunch of them. And this was about the only photo that I found that actually that gave you the realization of what we're sailing in, because we're in swells, especially across the Atlantic, going to Antigua. Generally, the swells were 15 to 20 feet of just that big movement of the water. Plus, then you have this wave up on top that's sometimes 4 or 5 feet. That generally is not going in the same direction. So you get a wave like that coming the other way or 10 degrees off that just throws your stern of your boat over. Being that the boat is so light, dynamic. It's very dynamic. So it's kicking that boat around quite a bit. And it's quite a challenge. So that was the only photo that really showed it. That's my boat. That's little B leaving Lagos in Portugal. And the waves were, I think, about 15 feet just coming out of the entrance of that area. Took a few tries to get out, but we managed. This was, I think, on Christmas Day, I think. Yeah, it's kind of nice. So again, 4th place across the Atlantic. So it was kind of fun. So the mini globe race, so that was the Transat, that was one race. And then the mini globe race is another one that starts in Antigua and goes all the way around to Antigua. So unfortunately, I didn't make it all the way. I got halfway. I did 2 legs out of 4. I thought that there was some health issues that needed addressing. So I ended up leaving the boat in Fiji and coming back to Canada to get some medical attention, which turned out to be non-threatening. So that was kind of nice, even though I had to stop the race. So it's still a bit of a piece for me because obviously I wanted to finish and wanted to do well. But I'll get a little bit more on that in a second. So on the first leg isn't from Antigua to Panama, which, it sounds kind of crazy. It was only 1,100 miles. We did it in, I did it in 9 days, and I ended up in third place. So I was pretty happy about that. And I actually passed one of the Aussies. So that was even better. I was just like, yes, I was so happy. But 9 days to do 1,100 miles in a 19-foot boat is pretty good. I think the average for the whole race up until Brazil right now was over 5 knots. The average for the leading guy, which is pretty good. Leg 2, which extended all the way from Panama to Fiji. Oops, sorry, Tom. I think I might have blasted you there with the pointer. All of a sudden, he leaves with his hand on his eye. I ended up in 5th place, which ended up being a total of 70 days and a number of hours and whatnot. So I was pretty happy about that. I ended up in 4th, actually, time, but I ended up taking a tow after we left Panama for, it's a big, long story, but apparently you can't get towed in a race. So it was one of my competitors. The German guy towed me off of the rocks. So it was either that or lose the boat. So I'm like, I'm going to take the tow. Absolutely. So yeah, the race, as I mentioned, is a global race. I was only able to do 2 legs. My friends, who I just was chatting with one of them today, actually the Australian guy that I passed, I was just chatting with him. All of those guys that are in the lead pack are actually finishing tonight and tomorrow. So Renault, the Swiss guy, he's going to be in about 10 or 11 o'clock tonight, back into Antigua. Yeah, so I'll show you that in a second. But yeah, so it's coming to an end, and I feel I'm just like I got goosebumps right now because I did video chats with 3 or 4 of them during this past few days, and just talking to them and having a good time, and the fact that we're going to meet up again someday and do some more sailing. This is kind of an interesting map that I saw a while back. And I kind of drew out where we were actually going from Portugal across the Atlantic and then through Panama. And I made it all the way to over here, which is about, I worked it out, is about 85% across the Pacific Ocean. Just to give you an idea, from Panama to the Marquesas, which is the first set of islands that we stopped at, was 4,100 nautical miles. So it was almost twice the Transat distance, just to get to the first set of islands that we were going to. It took me a little over 35 days to get there. So if you think about what you do in your life in 5 weeks, and I was sitting on a 19-foot boat with as much square footage for floor space as 2 doormats. 1 doormat in the cockpit and 1 doormat down below, because we had to carry our own water. So we had to carry, well, minimum 110 liters. But from Panama to the Marquesas, none of us were sure how much we needed, because it could be up to 50 days, depending on what happens, because we have to cross the equator around the Galapagos. So nobody knew what was going to happen. And we didn't have, obviously, petrol, like gasoline engines. We just had electric outboards. So those only bring us 5 or 6 miles. 5 or 6 miles on a 4,100 nautical mile journey is nothing. So we weren't really sure. So it could have been anywhere from, we were banking on 40 to 50 days. So we brought that amount of water. So most of us brought closer to 200 liters. And it worked out pretty good because I already knew how much water I needed from my first crossing. And I worked it out, 4 liters a day was perfect, right? And obviously that's saltwater showers and all that kind of stuff. So it's not as glamorous as some of these pictures and what you think it might be. When we get to these destinations, yeah, there's no cooking facilities. Actually, that's my cooking facility right there, is a jet boil. And some of the guys and girls had small little burners that they cooked some stuff on and a few things like that. But yeah.
Homemade gimbals installed?
Yeah. A machinist. Yeah, I made it. Yeah, I figure if I built a boat, I can build one of those too. And the funny thing was, actually, I built a whole bunch of them because a whole bunch of the competitors saw what I had, because we had to keep a blog of our journey when we were building the boat. And a bunch of them were saying, well, do you have any more of those? Because I'll buy one from you. So I ended up selling, they kind of funded my race. So I sold 7 of them to the competitors, and then I put it on Facebook Marketplace or something. I don't know what sites or whatever, solo sailing sites. And I sold a whole bunch. I sent some to Belgium, some to Australia, a couple all over the place. I was just like, I don't know. Okay, so yeah, I think I sold 20 of them total, I think, or something like that. So it bought a sale, I think, is kind of the way I was looking at it. I'll invest the time in putting these things together. Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of fun. But yeah, just on a little gimbal. I had one of the gimbals in the cockpit and one down below as well. So coffee, little stuff like that. Which, where are we at here? Oh, this is the Marquesas. So after 35 days, the Marquesas Islands, I highly recommend. My big bucket list thing was all about the South Pacific. And going there, it just seemed like all these exotic places to go, which it is. And they're just amazing. And, you know, it's all volcanic islands. Super, super nice. The only thing with the Marquesas that we found, all of the islands, they do not have coral reefs around them. So what happens is the first island that we went to, Hiva Oa, great big surges come in there all the time, and it's really, really rough. It's not a fabulous place to be in terms of anchorages and that sort of thing. You have to be on the right side and different things like that. But I mean, obviously, it's a French Polynesian island. So, I mean, the food is wonderful. You know, you could see there's a nice little breakfast there that they had. Everything's really nice and simple, but homemade, and, you know, fabulous people and just amazing, amazing places to be. So what do we have going? Yeah. So just a bunch of butter because I had, well, it's French Polynesia, all the baguettes and everything else. I ate so many baguettes, like it's just ridiculous. And I still lost weight, right? And then there's French strawberry jam. And then somewhere, I don't know, it's not in this picture, but there's a picture of all my sardines and stuff like that too. Yeah. This here is me. Oh, sorry. I was like, what is this? I thought this was the equator picture, but no. I had to cut out a bunch of stuff because there's so many things that happen. I mean, I crossed the equator and, you know, did a salute to Neptune, you know, a little bit of boost for me, a little bit for little B and a little bit for the C. So I did all that and everything else. This is actually a series of photos. It's kind of an amusing story, I suppose, but this other guy was sailing along with us. He was another Golden Globe racer. His name was Mark Sinclair, they call him Captain Coconut because his boat's name is Coconut. So anyways, he's sailing along with us, and he sailed with us up until just past Panama. And this is actually a series of photos before we got to Panama. So in Antigua, he was like, oh, he says, you must have lots of maple syrup on your boat being you're Canadian. And do you guzzle, like, how do you drink that much? And like, how do you keep, you know, it's so heavy in the glass bottles. And so he was joking around about this whole thing about maple syrup and pancakes. And I says, never mind, you guys have the cooker. You should be cooking me pancakes and I'll bring the maple syrup. So that was kind of an ongoing joke with us. And on the crossing, on the leg number 1 to Panama, he was coming up beside all of our boats. He's got a 36-foot boat. And he's coming up beside the boat and, or all of our boats. And just taking pictures and a few things like that. There's a few photos that I have that are photos that he had taken. But one of the things was I had a sponsor for my boat that was Nautical Coffee. And some of you might know him. Maybe you know Jeremy. I think he does some sponsorship for the Louisa Regatta. So he sponsored me. So he gave me a whole bunch of coffee. So I have all these bags of coffee on my boat. So what's happening here is me. Here we are in the Caribbean Sea, and I'm throwing a coffee bag across to Coconut, and you can't really see her. This is Jill. This is Captain Coconut's girlfriend, and she's trying to catch this bag. You can't see it because it's kind of dull. But anyway, what happened was this was a sketchy part in the video. These are stills from the video. Both of us went into this swell and we came together. My pole is over top of his lifelines. Here we are, like kind of in the middle of nowhere. And we're like, we almost freaking crashed. Like he almost took me out in the race. I'm just like, oh my God, how stupid is this? And we're like throwing coffee. We're like, people would ask, oh, how did this happen? How did you crash your boat? Well, I was throwing him coffee. Anyway, so yeah, so that's what happened there, and so hopefully they enjoyed the coffee, right? So, and I never did get my pancakes either. When we got to Panama, Jill didn't come forward with the pancakes, but just another shot of the boat. I was up on the bow for a little while, um, just enjoying kind of getting anxious and being, wanting to get off the boat and stuff like that. So I sat up on the bow for a while, let my feet dangle in the ocean for a bit. And then shortly after that, I found that there was actually a shark following my boat. About a 6-foot shark or something like that. So, but a lot of, I talked about the ups and downs of sailing on the ocean. It's not all sunny skies, but then the sunsets are amazing, and you get to see moon cycles, like the whole moon cycle. Every night you get to watch the moon start at a different part in the sky, and it sets, and then a full moon, and then it go. It's a hard thing to describe. Seeing that cycle of what's happening in the world like that, it's pretty humbling. Yeah, feel very fortunate to be able to. Oh, that's the shot of me on the bow. Just some random shots, celestial stuff. Actually, I think that top one is actually before I left in Lagos.
That's your navigation mode.
My mode of navigation. Actually, strangely enough, I'm sort of hooked on it now because I know how to do longitude. I can go both ways. I forgot exactly where I am. Sort of, but actually I kind of lost. Sorry?
Like the Bayfield placemats, we all use
Not
for navigation.
Right. Yes. Exactly. So I think I'm going to keep it up because I think it's kind of a fun skill. It's kind of a neat, party trick, I guess.
So was GPS not allowed, or was the Celestial just as a backup?
It was an add-on, yeah. So we had full internet capabilities. We had chart plotters. We had YB3 trackers. I think we counted 5 modes of GPS. Yeah, because we had the tracker, YB3 tracker. We had sat phone. We needed another mode of communication other than Starlink. So I had this Iridium Go exec, which worked out well until the battery failed. And I had a Zoleo, and I don't know what else I had, probably my phone, the sextant, plus handheld GPSs. We needed 2 of those. So we needed 2 of everything. Yeah, so I have a bunch of stuff at home. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
Did you correct the GPS with the sextant? My friend drives oil tankers around the world,
Mm.
and I actually use the sextant to correct the GPS.
No, I can't say that I corrected the GPS. I think it was the other way around. As I said, the dynamic boat and the GPS piece and trying to do celestial it's actually kind of ridiculous. Like actually another guy that I raced with, his name was Ertan. He's in the race right now. He's a Golden Globe racer. So him, Captain Coconut, and this other guy were saying you can't really do that on your boat, on these boats with the sextant. Yeah, so our error, he says, if you can get yourself within 30 to 40 miles with the sextant, you're doing pretty good. Yeah, like on the beach, we can do it within a half a mile because we're standing there, and on a bigger boat, you can do it because you have a little bit more stability. Well, our boat is like this, and it's all over the place, right? So, yeah, I think when I actually did my sites, because we had to do, to answer the one question, we had to do 6 plots. So 6 sites, longitude, latitude, and plot them on plotting sheets, full-on plotting sheets. So if I got myself, I think a couple of them I got within 10 miles, which was probably fluke, or I made a mistake somewhere in adding and subtracting. But so we had to do that, which is kind of neat.
Turn that in like homework at the end of the race.
At the end of the race, when we got to Panama, I had to take pictures of everything as I was doing it to prove that I did it at that time and not get someone else to help me with it when we got to shore. Yeah. So we had to send it to the founder. So the founder, just to give you a background, so his name is Don McIntyre, Australian guy, sailed all of his life, did all kinds of crazy things. And he used to race in the BOC races, which is British Oxygen Company. They funded these races or whatever, sanctioned these races, and they were around the world solo nonstop. And I think at the time when they first started them, they were started out of Rhode Island. And one of your yacht club members, Mike Plant, was in the races with my founder. So, and I think his picture of his boat is on the back wall there somewhere. So I think he did like 3 races with Don in these races. So anyway, Don is like he's friends with Robin Knox Johnson, Jean-Luc Vandenheed, Tapio Lehtinen, all these famous solo racers. He's friends with them. Tapio's in Antigua right now, waiting for the guys to finish. So he likes that nostalgic feel. He does the Golden Globe race, which is all sextant, stuff like that. So he thought, it's his rules. That's what we say. It's like his sandbox. You want to play in the sandbox, you got to play by his rules. So he wanted to have that component as sort of a nostalgic piece to the race. Yeah. So as you can imagine, we're immersed in nature, dolphins all the time. It was hard to catch the pictures of any whales or anything like that. I had a couple brown noddies, birds, come land on the boat, and a couple of them didn't want to leave. I had red-footed boobies when we were around the Galapagos on the boat, like for 2-3 days. They didn't want to leave the bowsprit, stuff like that. So really, really neat things that I saw. Yeah, it was quite a humbling experience to be immersed like that. I think this is just another GPS shot. And we had to do this for the race as well. As all part of our rules is when we came to the finish line, wherever it happened to be, we had to send a picture of us crossing the line. So this is me coming through the Panama Canal, which this is actually the finish line. And we all took issue with it, with the founder, with Don, because here we are, we're 19-foot boats, electric outboards, coming through one of the busiest shipping channels in the world. Like literally one ship came through and I did my best to get to the stern of that one as quickly as possible. And it took all I could to get through that area before another one was coming through. Like they are like this. They're that fast. And all around in this area coming up to the canal, I think I counted on the AIS around 35 or 40 ships anchored, just waiting to go through. So you have all this other stationary traffic, plus all these ships flying through there. And they're moving at 10 to 12 knots coming through that gap. And that gap isn't much more, I don't know how wide it is. Maybe, I don't know, 800 feet, 900 feet wide, 1,000 feet, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, this is one of the things we had to do. We had to put our little bear there, and we had to take a picture of our GPS and send it to the founder. He's got a lot of interesting rules. And these rules, change at whim, and literally during the time as we're racing. Yeah, it was getting to the point where it was pretty crazy. Some of us were in Tonga. Tonga is like 60 islands or so, 63 islands. And there's 2 or 3 of them that you can actually check in through customs. And we can choose anyone we wanted to go to. So that was fine. But we thought that and it was the same in the Marquesas, that we could leave from any of those spots as well. So we can check into one and then go sail to the next one and check out of that one and leave. So there's some advantages to that because some of the islands are actually closer to the next port by 20, 30, 40 miles, whatever it happens to be. So the guy that was in first place, Renault, he landed in Tonga at one island and literally was sailing and stayed there for a night or two, and then was sailing to the next island, which was about 30 miles then closer to the rum line, to Tahiti. And Don was changing the rules as he was sailing to the next spot, saying that you can't do that. And it was really, really frustrating because it's kind of high tense in terms of, your adrenaline and you're tired, and yeah, it wasn't a lot of fun. But this was one of his rules, which was kind of cute.
Do you all start at once, or are you just taking starting time?
So on the Transat, we all started together. Qualifier, we started together. The start of leg 1 we did, and the start of leg 2 we did. And then after leg 2, we had multiple stops. Like after Panama, we had multiple stops in between to get to Fiji. So this is part of the bear thing. So once we got to the Marquesas, we had to take a picture of our GPS and our bear, and then we left 7 or 8 days later. So certain islands were 7 days, and they changed that on another one. Said, no, you guys can stay an extra day. So then we stayed like 7 days from that time period. We get to go again. So it was staggered. So the ones that were faster got to leave earlier. Like some of them, Renault, who was in first, he didn't see the last guy, who was one of the Australian guys. He didn't see him again till Fiji because he was so far behind. And actually the American guy too was quite, he was in the back. So he didn't, Renault didn't see him until Fiji as well. Yeah. So it was staggered starts. Some were mass restarts and some weren't. Depends on what Don decided. Yeah. This was interesting. This was in Panama. I kept in touch with one of the classes. It was actually my good friend Morgan's wife. I went to go see these students before I left and kind of told them the story. And then they got right into it. And they were following the YB3 tracker and everything in the morning, all kinds of cool stuff like that. So I did a little call with them in Panama. And during the time that I was racing, Christine had the students make a big card for me. Yeah, and then they brought it to Panama. So I had the card, and I showed them the card, and they were all pumped and asking questions when I was there. And yeah, it was really cool. It was really nice. Yeah, tried to make that connection with young kids and stuff. A couple shots of me in Panama. That's leaving now Panama, heading to the equator. Big ships and stuff like that anchored on the way. A couple local authorities. If you know anything about, these are kind of in succession here. If you know anything about ocean currents and movement and all that kind of stuff, anything around the equator is pretty much zero wind. And sorry, I know you can't see very well. And this is what happens when 5.8 meter boats are around the equator. You could see, actually the yellow guy is me. And then you could see this is Renault. So he is already into a little bit better breeze, but like people we're all heading all over the place because there's no wind. And this guy up here, he was actually the guy that ended up in last. Gary from Australia, he decided to go north of the Galapagos. Bad idea with no motor. But yeah, we sat in this area. I was kind of fortunate because I was in this sort of lead pack, and then myself and Daniel, we ended up down and heading out into the trade winds afterwards pretty quickly, whereas a lot of these guys ended up sitting here for like 4 days or 5 days or something, which isn't that long actually, all things considered, because there's some people that we talked to afterwards that know of people that sat for weeks, literally. I know stories of the guys from the North Atlantic sat 200 miles away from the Azores for 20 days, he said, because he didn't have enough gasoline in his outboard to get even to the islands. So he didn't even bother starting his engine. Yeah, 20 days he sat there. So I felt very fortunate that I actually sailed all the way across with not a lot of problems that way on the North Atlantic. But anyway, equator stuff, typically this is what happens. What's happening here? I think this is after we got going after the equator crossing. And then so these are YB3, if you don't know, this is YB3 tracker screenshots. That's all this is. So every 4 hours it updated. So it'd give us an idea of where everybody was. So tactically we could see what's going on, and then we can also download. We couldn't use predict wind, but we could use windy. We couldn't use anything with routing, weather routing. So we couldn't do that. That was like against the rules for some. Some used it, we know it. This guy, where is he? What guy? This guy, he used it. I know he did. Anyway, there's another shot of me coming into Fiji, coming through these gaps. If you're ever anybody into surfing and stuff like that, this next gap right here is called Cloud Break. Cloud Break is one of the top 7 waves in the world that have a big tour thing going on and all that kind of stuff. So I really didn't want to go through that area. I decided to go through this one, which actually had some lead lights and everything else was really cool. Coming through there at night though, it's pretty intimidating, pretty sketchy. The next one, there's actually a series of islands up here called the Yasawas. And that's actually where the Tom Hanks movie Castaway was filmed. And also there's another island that was right close, and that is where, what's the Survivor series? That's where the Survivor Series was filmed. So it was all like 15 miles away. So we ended up in up here, just past Nandi Bay, in Vunda Marina. So Vunda, so it's only like 15 miles away, which was really, really cool to be in that area. Beautiful, beautiful spot for sure. I think this is the equator piece. So I was doing some cheers to Neptune and all this kind of stuff, a little bit to the sea, and it was good to me. So it was nice. There's some things on my YouTube channel and stuff like that if you wanted to, if you're bored and can't go to sleep one night. This was in the Marquesas. So Panama, left there past the Galapagos, heading west and south. I think Hivo is around 10 degrees south, so we're in the southern hemisphere. Again, which is kind of neat because I've never seen this, the Southern Cross. So at one point you could see the North Star and the Southern Cross at the same time, right? So that was kind of neat to see just these different experiences that you can't really describe. You have to experience it yourself. But anyway, this was the first island that I stopped at after Panama, and which is beautiful. You know, up until not that long ago, they still perform cannibalism there and all kinds of stuff like that. And 15 years, actually, well, I guess 16 years ago now, a German couple disappeared. Like 16 years ago, and they just found them actually recently, their body remains, and they figure there was cannibalism happening. Yeah. So the German that was racing with us, he was a little bit nervous. Yeah. Met one of the biggest things, not only having the experience of crossing oceans and solo sailing and the navigating and that sort of thing, was the people that I met. It's kind of funny, you know, you always think, oh, it must be the sailing. It must be the, you know, you become this awesome solo sailor and this and that, but it's about the people you meet. And randomly met this couple here. They're Canadian, they're from Southern Ontario, and it turns out that her nephews live in Thunder Bay. And she didn't even know I was there until she met up with another sailor in another bay, and she came to this bay and texted me, says, hey, I heard you're Canadian and you're in this race. Like, what's this race all about? You want to come for a beer? And blah, 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 blah. So we're on the boat and chatting it up, and she says, you're from Thunder Bay? I says, yeah. She says, my nephews live there. And the German guy that's with me, Christian, he was like, you guys come and like know each other? Like, crazy? What? How big is Canada? I says, it's huge, dude. Like, many, many Germanys can fit into Canada. I don't understand. Yeah. Anyways, so Jan and Jane. So Jan says to me, he says, like, do you need anything? Like, what do you need on your boat? Can we help you with something, whatever? And I says, well, I got to check out the chandlery here because I need a sunshade of some sort. I had a tent fly that I was using. You know, I was all concerned about weight. And I says, but I need one of these little sunshades, you know, 3 feet by 3 feet or something like that. And he says, well, you're not going to find it here. Like, there's nothing here like that. And Jane looks at Jan and she says, well, why don't you make him one? And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to make me one? Like, he says, well, I have the sewing machine down below. He says, I have some umbrella. I have bits and pieces. He says, what do you need? I says, well, I don't know. So he came over to the boat, measured up the boat, and he made me this sunshade. And in the center, you can't really see it, but there's actually a spigot in the center to catch rain. So it was my multi-purpose thing, and it had eyes on each corner. So I was able to move it and adjust it all over the boat, and it worked out really well. So he was helping me out. It was really, really cool. Random stuff. So on Hiva, I decided that I needed to get off the boat for a little while. Like, in this little bay, it was just rocking and rolling all over the place. 4-foot swell bouncing the boat all over the place. So I got this little hotel up the road, and my sleep patterns are way, way messed up, right? Because during the night I'm up all the time. And so when I do get to land, then like I'm up in the middle of the night and I'm wide awake, and then I fall asleep again at like 6 in the morning or something like that and sleep till whatever. So anyways, this one morning, first night that I stayed at this hotel, I got up in the morning and it was like, I don't know, it's 5 o'clock or something like that. It's just, the sky is just starting to brighten up a little bit, which would have been typical of me waking up and starting my day anyways. So, and I'm wide awake now. I can't even get breakfast yet and all this kind of stuff. So I look, and my friend Holly had Holly had messaged me, and in Canada at the time, I think it would have been like late afternoon or something like that. So I phone up Holly and we're chatting about something, I don't know, because she was doing some social media with me. So I got her on speakerphone and I'm out on the deck area outside the room, and it's kind of like a common deck, and I'm blah, 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 blah with her, and she's blah, 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 blah with me. And then I hear, excuse me. And I turn around and there's this young lady behind me. She goes, can you keep it down a little bit? We're trying to sleep. And I'm like, I wasn't even that loud, I didn't think. But I guess up on the top of in the rooms, they all had these windows that tipped out because there's no air conditioning. So they had these ventilation, and I'm like, oh shit. So they heard our whole conversation and we're keeping them up. And I'm like, oh my God, I felt like such an ass. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Keep it quiet. And so Holly and I finished our conversation. And then I went off and I got some breakfast and did some work on the boat. And then I came back to the hotel because I think I stayed there 2 nights or something like that. And they were sitting outside the room and I'm like, I'm so sorry for this morning. And we're chatting it up. And right away, like as we were talking to people, you get to figure out what part of the world they're from pretty quickly because of the accents and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't sense any European accent. I don't sense any, well, whatever, no Spanish, no nothing. And I said, oh, we're chatting it up. And I said, well, I'm one of the racers that, and they're like, oh yeah, we saw this boat, that boat. And yeah. And they said, well, where are you from? I said, I'm from Canada. And we're back and forth. I said, well, where are you guys from? Oh, we're from the US. And they were kind of like, we're really sorry. That's what they said. They said, we're from the US and we're really sorry that we might take over Canada. Not that I want to get into political bullshit right now, but so they're apologizing to me right away. And I'm like, it's not. And they said, is there any Americans in the race? I said, yeah, Josh is coming up. He should be here soon. And I think he's from Oregon. So anyways, we're chatting it up. And I said, well, what part of the US are you from? And they said, oh, Minnesota. You probably don't. And I said, okay, Minnesota. Okay, whereabouts in Minnesota? Oh, we're from the Twin Cities. I looked at them. I go, what, did you guys sail there? Yeah. I says, where are you guys from? What yacht club? Oh, Wayzata. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So I met up with Mark and Sarah. So I tell my German buddy that's with me, I says, you'll never guess what. These people used to live 6 hours away from me. And he's like, how big is America? And he still can't figure this out. How come you keep meeting people you know? And he just couldn't figure this out. So anyways, met up with Mark and Sarah. So if you ever see them, say, oh, Dan apologizes for waking you up early in the morning. So it was so nice. It was so nice to meet them. Their little catamaran, have you ever seen their little catamaran? So their little catamaran was on the hard because they had some work to do. Actually, it's not a little 50-something foot catamaran. And so they were on the hard because they had some, I think it was engine trouble or something. I forget what the story was, but they were on the hard in this island, which was a super, super sketchy area to be able to pull a big boat like that out. And so yeah, Mark helped me out with some tools and helped us, had a couple beverages with him and Sarah, and then we used their electricity. So then as soon as I said that, some friends, and so we all needed to charge our batteries, so we kind of used the electrical post by their boat and a bunch of stuff like that. So it was great to meet them. And yeah, everybody that was in the race, they're like, how do you know these people? Like, if you think about the Marquesas, if you look at it on a chart or Google Earth or something like that, it is really in the middle of nowhere. It was really, really interesting to meet them. So it was great. Felt heartwarming. Marquesas Islands, same thing as I mentioned, really volcanic islands, all kinds of crazy stuff. A bunch of us, 4 or 5 of us, went to one of the other island next to Hivola, and we were there for a couple of nights, and we ended up cleaning our boats. I'm cleaning my boat, we're all in the water like that, and a black tip reef shark swims underneath me. In the bay, there's these rays. I forget the name of them actually, but they're black. They're about this big, and they were all swimming around with us and stuff like that. And so the sea life and the being immersed in that is really, really cool. At certain times of the months, it has to do with moon cycles. the large manta rays come in there because there's fish in there that actually clean them off. So they're like the big, huge manta rays that you see, and they're just like, and they come in there to get cleaned off in this particular bay, but they weren't in there because, of course, we missed it. Yeah, so it was lots of fun. Just a couple of shots. I ended up with my smallest spinnaker sail, red and white with a Canadian flag on it. So I tried to keep the Canadian thing going as much as I could. There's my bigger flag flying somewhere. Maybe that was, I don't know, Tahiti or something. So then we carried on from the Marquesas to Tahiti was next. But this shot here is from a set of islands in between, which is called the Tuamotus. And if you Google that, it is just the idyllic coral reefs. And there's some of them that are big enough they have a little airport you can fly into them from Tahiti and do some snorkeling and that sort of thing. But these are literally big, awesome pools of just greatness, really, because there's sharks inside, there's rays, there's all kinds of sea life, coconut lined, all that kind of stuff. But the point of we had to sail through it. I was hoping to actually stop and anchor in one of these spots just to say I did, the palm tree, single spit of sand. But with our electric motors, it was just too sketchy to get into these places and then think to get out again with the surges and tides and whatnot. But the point of this one is I was coming through here, and this would have been closer to nighttime. And the gap in between the narrowest two atolls was 17 miles. And I don't know how wide or long your lake is, but from Thunder Bay, the distance is from Thunder Bay Marina to the Sleeping Giant is 17 miles. But we were all so nervous going through here. So we're sailing through and we're just like on guard because here we are, we came from wide open oceans and now we have to get ourselves through these little islands. And yeah, it was just such a weird feeling because now it just seemed like we were just like sailing in between those ballers or something like that. It was just so sketchy. But if you think about it, for us, and if we were fatigued and we fall asleep, if we were in the middle, that's only now, say, 8 miles or less than 7.5 miles to get to the shore. So if you fell asleep for over an hour, potentially you could be up against that shoreline and not even know it while you're sleeping. So you have to be, so there's a lot of fatigue involved and, staying up in situations where you don't really want to, and you have to persevere and stuff like that. So, but then just beyond that, I think 300 or 400 miles, actually about 300 miles is Tahiti, which was wonderful as well. We stayed at Papeete. We were only there 7 days, which sounds like a lot of time, but it takes us 2 days to get our kind of head on straight again, kind of get back into, get our rest and get some food into us and have a couple beers with friends and whatever. And then we have to prepare the boat and then get going again. So we really, 7 days just flies by. Ideally, 11 or 12 days in each spot would have been perfect because then we would have had time to actually go and see some sights and stuff like that. This other picture is a guy that I met on the street in Tahiti, and his friend didn't speak any English, but he spoke some English, and he was on the street selling ukuleles, and like the typical Polynesian ukuleles, and that's what this guy was selling. If you know anything about ukuleles, they're 4 strings, but they double the strings to make them give it that sound. And so anyways, I just had some lunch there one day, and he's like, "Oh, come sit." He's like super friendly, and so I sat there the one day, and he's like, "What do you like?" He says, "You're not from here. Where are you from?" And all that kind of same old story. And he learned that we're doing the race, and I says, "Oh, I didn't have anything on me at the time, but we all had these little stickers." So I says, "I'll come by and I'll give you some stuff." So I had a few stickers for him, and I had a Canadian little lapel thing, and I gave him a bunch of stuff. And he was just like, he says, "Come back tomorrow." He says, "I have something for you too," he says. So, of course, we got nothing else to do. So we were walking around, and I go and see him again, and he's got this wonderful seashell necklace for me. And I'm like, "Oh, this is incredible, dude." He says, he's originally from Tonga. And he says, "This came from Tonga. All the shells are from Tonga." He tells me this whole story. And at the time, he had to go to his truck to get the necklace. He says, but you got to watch my ukuleles. So I'm there. I'm like, okay, I'm standing on the street corner with these freaking ukuleles, and and two of my competitors come by, and I'm standing there, and they're like, what are you doing? I says, well, I forget his name now. I says, I'm kind of watching these ukuleles. He's going to get me something. And they're like, what are you talking about? And this is after I've met Mark, and I've met this other Canadian, and I've met all these people. Now I'm like on the side of the street selling ukuleles. Well, it turned out these other two Germans came by, and they bought two ukuleles. This guy comes back with a necklace, and they're holding the ukuleles. They give him the $100 and whatever dollars it was for the ukuleles, and he's like, "You sold two?" He says, "Usually I don't sell two ukuleles in 3 days." He says, and he was all happy and everything else. He gives me the necklace. I'm just like, "Woohoo! Here we go!" It was just lots of fun. Anyways, before I left, he came down and he had a nice gift bag. He had a Tahitian flag for me, and so I forget what was in the gift bag. And he just came down. He wanted to say goodbye and just have a good journey. And it was just like I said, the people that I met are just incredible. He says, "Come back." He says, "Come back and see me." He says, "I'll probably be on the same street corner." Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. Lots of neat people and lots of good food, and same thing. The supermarket in Tahiti, like I didn't realize Tahiti was like Papeete is as commercialized as it was. We arrived at the municipal dock, and like the vehicle traffic was just flowing, and we're like in culture shock because we've been by ourselves for 40 days or 50 days or something like that, and there's tower cranes and there's construction going on. There's people everywhere, and this guy on the street selling ukuleles. But it's just a great space to be. Not far from there is Moorea. If you ever see pictures of Moorea, Moorea is like you could see it from Papeete. It's like 3 miles away, and then Bora Bora is right there as well. It's 15 miles away. All that area is just super cool. Yeah, really really nice. I think that's actually Moorea over there. That's a shot from Tahiti. That's how far away it is. It's really, really close. Lots of really neat stuff, lots of culture, and the Polynesians are really neat too. Back to the celestial piece, I didn't realize it until I got to Fiji, but the Polynesians used to use coconut shells. They split them in half, and they had a series of holes drilled in them, and that's what they used to sight the stars. So the stars being in certain positions, they had the holes that lined up with stars at certain times of the year. And it was just like, are you kidding me right now? Like and they did this thousands of years ago. That's how they navigated across oceans, is with these damn coconut shells. Because somebody from the generations knew that these stars lined up in a certain position at certain times of year. Yeah, it was just amazing. So after Tahiti, we landed in Tonga. And my buddy, that's the Australian guy, my buddy Dan, he's actually probably going to land in Antigua probably early hours in the morning here. And that's Pilar. We met at this barge. Dan comes to me before I get checked in with customs, and he says, "Where do you want to go? Do you want to raft up to me?" He says, "Or do you want to go to the floating barge that serves cold beer?" And him and I, Australians drink a lot. Canadians are known to drink a lot. So we're going to the barge. And you can kind of see it here. Guess where they're from? Canada. They're from Canada. If you know geography in Canada very much, Winnipeg, these people that own the barge are from Winnipeg, which is like 8 hours away from Thunder Bay. And I get there, and this guy that owns the floating barge is Barry. He knew I was coming already. He's like, "Dad, Canada," and he's yelling my name before I get there. I'm like, "Look at this is ridiculous." And then he starts doing this thing, and I won't even do it because you guys may not know the correlation, but Bob and Doug McKenzie are these Canadian guys that do this chant, this roo coo 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 thing. And this Barry, I'm serious, this Barry starts going, he's belting it out like this. And Dan, the Australian guy, says to me, he says, "What is that? Is that like a Canadian bird or something? Or what the hell?" He says, "What is that sound?" Don't worry about it. Anyway, so normally this is for dinghies, but we all put our boats right up against the side of his barge, and he had fish and chips and cold beer and margaritas and all kinds of stuff like that. And yeah, it was super cool. Yeah, lots of fun. Actually, that's them there, Barry and Charlene. A couple shots, yeah, peaky-eyed. This guy here met in Fiji. We called him Tuna Dan. His name was Dan. He had this big catamaran, 52-foot Katana, beautiful boat. He invited me over for dinner, and I was right across from him in Fiji. And he says, "Oh, we caught a tuna." He says, "Maybe you want to come for dinner?" I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah!" Like, you know what I've been eating for the past 2 months? I says, "Tuna sounds awesome." Meanwhile, I don't eat tuna here, like never eat canned tuna, none of that kind of crap. And I'm like, tuna just sounds great because you're going to cook it on a barbecue and it sizzles and all this kind of stuff. Anyways, and he looks at me. He says, "Well, how many?" Because we're all in the same dock. He goes, "How many of you are in the race that are here now?" I said, "I don't know, there's 5 or 6 of us so far out of the 14. And he says, "Well, why don't all of you come? Come for dinner. Come for dinner." And that's all of us on his catamaran having dinner. And I says, "Well, like at the time," I says, "Well, like you have enough tuna?" He goes, he pulls out his phone. He says, "Yeah, we caught a tuna. It was 64 kilos. 64 kilos is like 130-pound kilo." He shows me a picture of this tuna. He's hanging onto it like this. It is like this big. It is huge. He opens up his freezers on the catamaran, and it's just full of frozen. He's got another one. He's got bags and bags of fresh stuff. We ate tuna for 3 days. We all had dinner that night, and then he gave us some for the next day. And then the following day, he says, "You guys want some more?" He's giving me bags. I says, "Well, I don't know where to put it." He says, "Well, I'll keep it in the fridge." He says, "You just come on the boat and grab it." He says, "You know where it is." And yeah, so I called him Tuna Dan. We still chat. He might be in Portugal coming up soon too, which I'll mention. Yeah, so we kept in contact. It's been a lot of fun keeping in contact with all these people that I've met along the way. Quick story. I don't know if anybody's ever been to South Polynesia before, but anybody had kava before or heard of kava? Kava is a root, and the Polynesians grind it up. And of course, Tonga says theirs is the best, and Fiji says theirs is the best. They grind it up, and it used to be, back in the day, like thousands of years ago, they used to use this as their beer. So they used to drink, so they mix it up like this. Sorry, it starts like this in some rainwater that they collect, and they're mixing it all up, and then they sift it through these cheesecloth, and this pail, it doesn't really show it very well, but this pail is this big around and is this deep. And they're mixing all this up, and me and Dan, the Australian, and the German guy are sitting there with these other 2 guys. And they're mixing all this up. "Yeah, come have kava." Kava is like, come on over for a beer, But it's a family thing. The families do it. Everybody does it and comes have kava. As you can see here, there's another big group having kava. They're doing a big gathering to raise money for the rugby team. But anyways, these guys invited us. Actually, it started off with the customs and immigration guys mentioned to us about the police. They said, "Yeah, you guys want to have kava? I've never had kava before." The German guy never had kava before. They said, "Go to the police station. They have kava every day at 5:30. I'm like, "The police station? What?" Yeah, the firemen show up and the police guys, and they all have kava. He says, "You can have free kava, just try it out." So anyways, we're like, okay. So we show up at the police station, me, the German, and the Australian. So it sounds like a bad joke, right? So we all show up and we're like, "Do you like kava? We heard something about free kava." They're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." And then they're all chatting away in Tonga and this and that. So anyways, we go out to this shack and they start mixing this up. So there's 5 of us sitting there, and they have like probably 6 or 7 gallons of this kava. So we start drinking it, and it's kind of like, it kind of makes your body sort of just mellow, but your head's still okay, but your body's sort of just, and you really don't care about a lot of things. And you just chat. You talk about nothing about politics or religion or anything. It's all positive. It's all, it's very zen or whatever you want to call it. But that's what these people do. So anyways, we're with these cops. There's 5 of us. Like I said, about 6 gallons of this stuff, 6, 7 gallons. And I'm looking around, and it dawned on me. I'm like, how long is it going to take us to drink all this? We're drinking out of coconut shells, and we're like, we're going to be here like for a day. And they, no, there's going to be a bunch of more cops show up. So all these are police officers, sergeants, and we're all drinking and the customs, the immigration governor comes in or something like that, and we're all just like, what the hell's going on here? But yeah, so it was quite interesting. It was a lot of fun. sort of highly recommend Cava if you get a chance to try it. You can buy it online. You can buy it online and have it shipped here. It's quite interesting. It's just this powdery gunk. Tastes like, I don't know, dirt water, puddle water, you know. Makes your teeth go all numb and your tongue go all numb and your body feel all kind of funky. Yeah, it's fun. Just a couple of beach shots and stuff like that. We went to a couple of spots in Tonga just for the day to go swimming and just kind of relax a little bit. Met, you know, again, the people that you meet is just amazing. I'm part of the Ocean Cruising Club. You have to do like 1,000 miles on the ocean, not necessarily solo, to be part of the club. And these are just people that, you know, everybody's on an app and everything else. So you get to know who all these people are. So they're all Ocean Cruising Club members. This couple here, this is their boat, which is a 1-year-old 50-foot Katana, brand new boat. And these other people here, they had a 57-foot Moody cruising around. This guy was solo sailing around the world, just, you know, from the Netherlands, stuff like that. The funny story about this couple was we met them. I had met these guys already in this other bay, chatted it up, got to know them fairly well, and then they introduced us to this couple at a restaurant that we were at called the Kraken. And anyway, so we started chatting and this and that. And then this lady here, she got a few wine into her and she started kind of like chirping us about our boats. And we're like, and she's like, oh, do you guys have a head on your boat? And we're like, no, we don't have a head. Oh, you guys have a bucket and you have a bucket and chuck it. And she, oh, where do you cook? And we're like, yeah, we got a little jet boil and this and that. She goes, oh my God, we were just joking and laughing about it. She's being quite nice about it, but she was chirping us a bit. And she says, you know what? She says, why don't you guys come back to our catamaran tomorrow morning and we'll have breakfast, you know, some small little breakfast items and I'll make you a nice coffee and all this kind of stuff. She says, I have a nice coffee machine. And it's like, it was beautiful that she invited us to come. So we all went in somebody's dinghy, one of their dinghy. We all arrived on their boat. I mean, like she opens up the doors on the back of the boat. Like it's just this enormous brand new catamaran. We get in there, we're sitting down having crumpets and all this other stuff, whatever they brought and cooked. And then they start taking our orders for coffee and whatever you want, you know, Americanos and cappuccinos and blah, 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 whatever. And it'd be damned if her coffee machine didn't break. So now in comes Dan. I'm like, hey, I forget her name now. I says, do you want me to go back to my boat and get my jet oil? Because it works. And my hand grinder, I didn't actually say it just like that, but I was like, hey, should I say that to her? Anyways, they got it all sorted out and we had some coffee afterwards. But it was kind of funny because here I am in my 19-foot little boat and she's in her brand new, you know, $3-4 million Katana sail catamaran and her coffee machine breaks. You know, it's just the way it goes. Again, beautiful sunsets, all kinds of crazy things happened. While we're in Fiji, my good friend Jacob, he's the Polish guy that lives in Ireland. Him and I, we did a regatta, the Vunda Marina, great hosts. If you ever get a chance to charter any boats or do anything like that, go to Vunda in Fiji. Great people. They do a nice, wonderful big song. They do 3 or 4 songs when you arrive and all kinds of stuff like that. Really nice. But they hosted this Coconut Cup regatta, and Jacob and I ended up winning the regatta, which was really cool. And they also had some other stuff going on where we had to do competitions. So it was all MGR entrants, and we all competed against each other for these. One was on land stuff, so we did like egg toss and tug of war and all kinds of stuff the one day. And then we did the race the next day, but we ended up in first place, so it was kind of fun. And then they gave us some artisan glass blown stuff as a prize, so that was kind of nice. And a bottle of, was it Fijian vodka or something like that. So yeah, it was kind of nice. And then while I was in Fiji, we did a little outreach, and we went to a school called the Vunda District School Elementary, and we got some students that we spoke to the whole group, and we tried to inspire some young kids to get into sailing. And the next day we brought them down because Vunda runs a sailing school, and they're really trying to get students back into sailing and understand what their heritage is. We asked a group of students, I don't know if you could really see it, there was about probably closer to 100 students there from grade 7 and under. and a lot of them didn't know about the heritage. Only a handful of them had ever been on a boat outside the island or outside the coral reefs, only a handful, and only about 5 or 6 had ever been on a sailboat. So the whole idea here was to get the kids interested and, try out the boats. So we got them down at the Vunda Marina afterwards, and we got them out on the 580s. I think, there's a shot there of some of the students out on the 580s, out on the boats, and got them. This was the first time ever on the water, and some of them first time on a sailboat. So it was a lot of fun to see them inspired and work with those kids. It's kind of, again, back to the people, right? I mean, the places are awesome, but it's all about the people, really. And this guy here, actually, you can't see his face, but he's the Fijian sailing team. So in the Olympics coming up in Los Angeles, he's going to be the representative for Fiji. Yeah, uncontested. So he was the only one that showed up. Says, okay, you're it. Actually, the guy that coaches him is from the west coast of the U.S. as well, Chris Goldfinger. So he's going to be helping him out as well. Really good guy, again, Ocean Cruising Club and stuff like that. One of the things, as far as my takeaways go, was the people. I'm going to need a drink. It's sort of in the middle of what I'm doing right now. I want to thank all of you. And if I could, maybe a Barb or somebody, I have something for the yacht club. So I have it's just a thank you for the club, and has part of the chart. I covered up the areas that I didn't sail in, and it shows my results and a few things like that. So I'd like to present that to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, let's go here.
I have a few of them, so.
I thought you were maybe bringing some canned sardines for us. I'll take this.
Or some kava.
Yes,
We'll have a big kava party.
Okay, wait, we've got to get this in here too.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will give
You're
this
welcome.
to the board and
welcome.
we'll find a good spot
Oh,
for it.
yeah. So takeaways and lessons learned. I just wanted to jump that in because I didn't know if I was going to have time to do that at the end exactly. But I mean, the wonderful places, being immersed in nature, seeing the wildlife, seeing the sargassum weed, that's a real problem. Sunsets and moons, the moon phases and all kinds of stuff like that. There's the personal side, having that experience is really great. Then on the personal side, persevering through sailing on a small boat like that is just a ridiculous amount of physical effort and mental effort. But I think I'm a better person for it, and hopefully I can extend that those experiences, on the lake, what is this lake, or Lake Superior. I say the lake, I mean the lake. On different races and stuff like that, and help people out and different things. So it's been a lot of fun. My hope is that, this sort of thing, to me, not to sound arrogant, but I somehow I don't think it's a huge deal, because it's just something that just sort of evolved and it just became this. Whereas people that look at it from the outside say, oh man, you sailed 16,000 nautical miles in a 19-foot boat all the way from Portugal to Fiji. Who does that? That's ridiculous. It's such a feat. But I think it has to do with just step by step and putting yourself in the positions to be able to do something. And my hope is, even some of you, not that you're maybe have aspirations of sailing around the world, but maybe you want to take up sailing or sail across Lake Superior for your first time, or whatever it happens to be. Maybe you want to build a birdhouse, whatever is your thing. Maybe you've never built a birdhouse. How many people here have built birdhouses? Maybe not a lot of people. So so it's about stepping outside the box and challenging yourself, because at any age that's an important thing to do. And I hope that people will do that if they want to challenge themselves and step outside the box a bit. So what's next for me and what's next for Little B? Right now, as of like 4 or 5 hours ago, Little B is right here on a container ship named Mia, heading up towards Cape Verde again, and is going to be in Portugal towards the end of the month. And my wife and I are going to go there. Part of the deal is she was for sale before the new year, and she sold to a Dutch guy that lives in Portugal. So he has already signed up for the next Transat. So Little B will sail the Transat, I think it's in October or November or something like that. He's going to get her ready, and then his plan is maybe to do the mini globe race in 2026. So she will sail on, just not with me on board. I think if I do something like this again, I think it's going to be on a bigger boat with a nice, 2 containers of propane and hot and cold pressure water that's fresh, not seawater. So I think that's next for Little B. As I mentioned, she's ready to head up that way soon. So at the end of the month, we're flying out, I think, on the 28th or something like that, to head back there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's kind of the gist of Little B and my adventures for the past few years. Actually, it's been about 6 years because I started the boat more or less around this time in 2020. So it's been a big part of my life and a big part of these girls' lives as well. I mean, I built the damn boat in the garage, so the vehicles were not in the garage at the times. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you. And there's some more floaties. So you guys distribute them how you want. I don't know how that's going to work. But.
You want to field some questions, Dan?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So, seasickness is not a non-factor for you?
So seasickness, yeah, good question. I had problems on my first crossing for 2 nights. I think I was pretty sick, like literally vomiting. But then during even the qualifier and all the rest of it, I didn't experience that level of seasickness, but I didn't realize what it was because the first 2 or 3 days, I really didn't eat a lot. I wasn't really sick, but I just wasn't hungry. And I think that was my seasickness, having that I have already sailed already. But I know some people like Captain Coconut, for example, he gets seasick all the time. And he's been around the world with that particular boat twice. Plus he's a Navy officer. Yeah, but it didn't really bother me too much. But I think just not being that hungry for a few days at the beginning of each passage.
Is that something you kind of get over?
I don't think so. Like Captain Coconut, that guy, he still doesn't get over it. At certain times and certain motions, he still gets sick, he said. So I think it's just an individual thing. Some competitors of mine got sick, but not a whole lot. Mainly it was from GI from something they ate before they left one of the islands. Yeah, so good question. Yeah.
How do you handle marine growth on the bottom of the boat?
Yeah, so anti-fouling is just a huge thing, huge issue. So everybody had different methods of what they did for anti-fouling. And I didn't realize it. We were just looking at different boats and stuff like that just recently because I don't know if many sailors do this, but I tend to watch a lot of sailing videos. Yeah, I'm addicted. But I ended up having copper coat. I put copper coat on the bottom of my boat. So I highly recommend copper coat. It's a copper based, kind of like VC17 if you ever use that on Superior, Interlux. So copper based, but it's non-ablative. So it's epoxy, the copper gets mixed right into the epoxy and you put on like 5 coats of the stuff and then sand it out. And then every once in a while you burnish it. So you kind of buff it up a little bit to expose some of the copper again. So when I left Halifax to Portugal, there was 0 on my boat, nothing. And that was 34 days of sailing, I think. And then obviously it was clean when I left Portugal. When I got to Antigua, there was a little bit of growth, but just had to go down with a green little cloth and just give it a little, that was it. In the Marquesas, so 35 days of sailing again, We all went in the water. We all had growth along the water line because a lot of times, because we're all sitting like this in the water all the time when we're sailing, depending on, Atlantic is this way. Pacific is like this. So we're all like this, and that side of the boat got growth on it because I didn't put my water line high enough. Yeah, so it's an issue. And then also what's happening right now to the guys and girls that are racing. So they left Recife recently, and now they're like within 300 or 400 miles of Antigua. But in the Atlantic is the sargassum weed. And it's a big problem. Like it slows the boats from 6 knots to 2. And then, if that's happening while you're having a snooze, well, you're sitting there and everybody else is moving ahead. And literally they have to get, something in there to knock it off the bottom of the boat or the rudders. And the keel is another story, but what they end up doing is they turn the boat around, sail down, and then sail back up again to let it wash off the keel. Yeah, it's a problem though. Yeah.
What kind of keel does Little B have, and will the new owner rename the boat?
The keel, that's a good question. So the keel's made out of just a flat plate. It's a 5/8 plate with lead bulb on the bottom. And it's bolted onto the boat with 10 half-inch bolts. Yeah, so it's a handmade keel. So having a flat plate, for the sailors that are in the room, that keel needs to be a foil shape for you to be able to get some lift to go upwind. So our boats do not sail upwind very well, not at all. So it's a bit of a problem. So, and then the new owner, I don't know if he's going to rename the boat. He hasn't mentioned it yet, but I mean, yeah, it's hard to say. It'll still always be hull number 20. Yeah, so that's kind of neat. So either way, I'll be able to watch it, in the years to come if he does some races, which would be pretty cool to see. Yeah. Yes.
So the race has 5 legs, but it looks like it stopped a lot more than 4 times. How does that work?
Yeah. So.
The question, please.
Yeah. So he was asking about the legs and the different stops. So as we mentioned, from Lanzarote to Antigua was 1 leg, 1 stop, and same thing with Panama. And then from Panama to Fiji, there was stops in the Marquesas, Tahiti, Tonga. Yeah, Tahiti and Tonga, so 3 of them. So as the racers arrived at those spots, they had to take their time in UTC, and then they were able to leave 7 days later. So then it's like staggered starts. So then all of a sudden Renault would leave, and then 6 hours later or 10 hours later, Daniel would leave, and then Pilar would leave, and so we're all just kind of leaving randomly. We're all keeping our own times. And then the only time that we had a mass restart again would have been in Fiji. And then Don changed the rules later on and decided to make some mass restarts along the way as well, to kind of it also keeps the group together, because one of the big concerns was when they left Mauritius, they did a group restart again, because Don wanted them to be roughly in the same weather systems together as they came into Durban, because getting around from Durban to Cape Town is pretty perilous. I think it's 600 miles, and they have, how many? 600 miles, and they have 40 or 50 search and rescue teams along that shoreline. Like lots. Yeah, it's a very, very dangerous area. But they all made it around, no problems. Like everything just sort of clicked. And I mean, I say that, me not being on the boat, but when you're on the boat, I know what they were going through, and it's very, very frustrating and very concerning, and you don't want to sleep, and you're up for a long period of time. So yeah, certain places they had mass restarts, and after Cape Town, they had a mass restart, and then he kept mass restarting after that, because he also wanted them, when they left Recife to get to Antigua, which was 2,300 nautical miles, he wanted them roughly together as well. So yeah, good question.
So you might stay in one layover for a while if you're leading, it would be shorter if you're behind then?
No, still the same amount of time. So everybody would have stopped for the same amount of time. Yeah, so like even though Renault, who was in the lead, he stayed for 7 days, say in Tonga, by the time Josh come up from behind, Josh the American guy, he came to the island to start his 7 days. Renault had already been left, he'd already left like a week and a half ago. So it's kind of, you kind of get disconnected from people. Gary, the Australian guy, he never saw us. He only saw a couple of people in a couple of the islands between Panama and Fiji. He felt totally disconnected. He felt like he was just out sailing by himself and doing nothing. He's very disheartening for him. And he ended up stopping. He decided to stop. Him and I made the announcement in Fiji, and he sailed to Australia, where he's from, and he decided to stop. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Got a question?
Yeah, Tom?
That is sailing alone for that amount of time, how is that different than sailing with a crew? And how is your thought process different than when you're sailing with the crew?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So sailing solo compared to crewed. I've done a fair bit of both. I've done more solo now than the opposite. But sailing solo, there has its challenges because you're self-sufficient. If something breaks, you have to be the person. If something, you have to change the sails, you're the person. Weather systems, you have to be checking navigation, you have to be, you're still cooking for yourself. So there's so many things. Everybody says, well, you must be bored. Like, what is it that you're doing on the boat all day, all night, for 35 days? But you're so busy doing all kinds of different things that sneaking in time to sleep is kind of cherished. The solitude, like a lot of people said, oh, weren't you lonely? And I'm like, well, I wasn't really lonely. No. Like, I read lots of books. I communicated. I ended up having Starlink after Tahiti, from Tahiti, Tonga to Fiji. So I had better internet than I had at home, right? So we were able to do video calls with friends and family and stuff like that. And, the communication piece was pretty key. So we still had lots of communication and stuff like that. And I actually, now I kind of enjoy the solo sailing because you kind of get used to that, and you can do whatever you want on the boat, right? It's your thing. You can make those decisions, and you have to sit with yourself in terms of the repercussions if you make a bad navigational choice or something like that. But it is certainly nice to have a crew, because then when you do go to sleep, that you can actually have a sleep and be on watches and have that routine and have people that take responsibility for other things. Like if you're on a crew of an ocean-going boat with 10 people, well, you have a dedicated navigator, and you have maybe there's a dedicated cook, and maybe then you have 2 or 3 watches of people that are shifting on the boat that are going through the night and stuff like that. So then it becomes a nice routine where it becomes pretty slack, right? Because your responsibilities become this compared to everything, right? So which do I like better? I don't know. I guess a little bit of both, I suppose. I guess, I really would have liked to, and I never got a chance to, except for with Jacob in Fiji, is to sail with some of those people that I was racing with. Like, they're good friends, but all we did was communicate, by WhatsApp and video calls and stuff like that while we were sailing. We never sailed together, which was kind of a drag. But anyway, yeah. Yes?
Dan, as a Navy wife, I can attest there's a thing as re-entry. And because you've each been in your solo world, and then when the deployment is over and you come back home, you always had a separation of church and state, kind of, sort of. And how long was your re-entry after being solo so long? And then maybe that's a question for your spouse. But how was it? Because how long were you gone total?
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
So how was re-entry? Did it take a couple weeks, or did you crave your solo?
Are you asking if it's over yet? Here I am.
I'm just curious, because that is a real common thing in the military with deployments.
Yeah.
With families coming back together and merging.
Yeah. No, it's a big thing for sure, because like again, I'm still, my sleep patterns. Oh, so the question is about re-entry and how are you dealing with being immersed in society again, as opposed to being in this race situation where you're in this little bubble almost, right? So it's a big challenge, and it still is a big challenge for me, to be honest with you, especially because the race is still going on, and I'm communicating with the friends that are sailing right now. I just chatted, like I said, video called with them, a few of them a few days ago. I was just chatting with Dan by text this afternoon, stuff like that. So it's been difficult. My sleep patterns are still not 100%. Like just last night, I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm laying there wide awake, stuff like that, because I'm used to getting up at those times. I think it's getting better at certain times, so that sort of thing is getting better. Do I want to be sailing again? Yeah, on the oceans.
Does your wife want you to be sailing again?
Maybe she was really sad that I had to stop. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? I know. Yeah, no, it's a big thing. Maybe she got used to me not being around and being self-sufficient, and yeah. Well, my nephew, for example, works away from the city of Thunder Bay and is not home for a month at a time. And then when he does come home, we notice that he and his wife, they're at each other, because now her life is different because he's there, and he messes up her system. And maybe I'm messing up my wife's system too. I'm sure that's happening, so yes. Yeah, good question. Yes.
How did it affect your mental health being out on the water alone for that long? I would have panic attacks and anxiety and that.
Right. So yeah, mental health on the water as you're sailing. So that's a good question. I had a bigger problem when I first did it in 2023, leaving Halifax, because that was my first time out. For example, you kind of get yourself ramped up, and maybe people have noticed this if you sailed across Lake Superior before, especially if you've done it solo or something like that, or maybe double-handed. I ended up getting to a point where I was sort of panicky about, you always run through, okay, if this happens, this is what I would do. If this happens, this is what I would do. And I thought to myself, if something does happen to this boat, because this is a hand-built boat, if I hit something, like we've seen a few of the movies, I'm not even going to mention them because I don't want to talk about boats sinking. But there's movies out there where boats hit containers and the boat sinks. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what happens if that happens to me? What do I need to do? Well, I got a life raft on board, and I need to get that life raft out of the boat and get it ready to deploy. And I need to do this. I need to get my grab bag and all these things. And I actually pulled my life raft out of the cabin area and put it on the deck of the boat and strapped it there, because I thought to myself, that's going to be like 30 seconds less that I need to, get that thing out. So to get myself prepared, because I thought to myself, man, if this boat goes down, I had an EPIRB, but who's going to come and get me? Ain't going to be nobody. So I think I got over that then. And then when I did the rest of it, I was okay for the most part. I mean, there was moments, don't get me wrong, especially from Panama to the Marquesas, because that was 35 days. When you leave the area of the Galapagos Islands and realize that there's thousands of miles in front of you, and you get in between all that, and you realize that there's nothing in between you other than a bunch of Chinese fishing boats that don't want to know where you are, and you can't see them because they shut their AIS off. Yeah, that's not very good. So there's moments, and there's highs and lows, and there's troubles at home maybe, and there's things that Carrie Ann was dealing with at home that I couldn't help with at the time, and so there's a lot of anxiety and stuff like that happens. So you're right, it's a thing. Yeah, for sure. Yes.
So what's the prize for winning this race?
What's the prize for winning the race? Does anybody know anything about the race to Alaska? Yeah. So the prize. The teddy bear. So the prize for the race to Alaska is a set of steak knives. It used to be a set of steak knives. There's no money. There's a globe trophy that you get, which I received in Fiji because I was more or less halfway there, and Don was happy that I did what I did, and I was, one of the founding members of the association and stuff like that. So yeah, there's not much of a prize. There's not $500,000 or anything like that. Definitely not Formula One sail GP stuff, that's for sure. Yeah, not much of a prize. I think it's, all of their names will be in the Guinness Book of World Records. There'll be stuff like that goes on, because this is the first time an organized race like this has happened in a 19-foot boat. Other people have done it in a 19 and 20-foot boat before, but never in an organized race. Yeah. So there's not much of a prize. Yes.
You touched on this very briefly. Do you see a lot of whales?
Yeah, we saw lots of whales. I saw a few whales. I heard lots at night, breaching and exhaling near me and stuff like that. Yeah. Sharks, lots of dolphins. Mainly, every place I arrived, there was dolphins. Turtles, fishes, stuff like that. I think I saw the one night, this was also North Atlantic stuff, big tuna came up out of the water, right clear out of the water. I don't know how big it would have been. And then shortly after that, my deck was getting littered with squid, because it was going after the squid, and all the squid would jump on my boat because of especially on the bow, because of the nav lights. So any sort of lights and stuff like that, all these little squid would land on the boat, which was great. I had some good pictures, but then some of them got in areas where I couldn't find them. And then they started to rot and they become mushy, and it was just disgusting. Yeah, so there's some good things and bad things. I didn't fish while I was on board. And I should have. I had a fishing rod and some lures and stuff like that, and other guys were fishing and catching small tuna and having sashimi and all that kind of stuff. And but I never did, because I thought about wasting all the fish. But I guess in the big scheme of things, who cares about this little fish that, I'm going to waste a little bit of meat in the big scheme of things on the ocean. So, but yeah, saw lots of neat things. Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Yes.
You talked about the 19-foot boat being challenges on it. On your leg down there in South Africa, very tough conditions down there. Are you saying that is that why Don McIntyre altered the legs to get around that rough area, or what was going on there? What was going on with the race committee, those decisions?
Like the decisions in terms of the stops?
Yeah.
So Don McIntyre, so the question is more or less about logistics and different stopovers and stuff like that.
Because in some races, you call in every day and the committee says you've got to watch out, there's conditions ahead, especially with a very small boat like this.
Yeah.
This particular type of race.
Yeah. So the search and rescue coordinators around South Africa, for example, like you had mentioned that, they were in contact with us already back in Fiji, giving us, things to do, websites to follow. Once they got to Mauritius, then they contacted them, and they all knew where we were anyways, because once they figured out of the race and it kind of built a little bit of momentum, they were all following those competitors on the YB3 trackers already, so they knew when they were coming in and that sort of thing. So so the first stop was in Durban, and then from there was 2 or 3 other little stops that they made, and the sailors had choice where they can go depending on their situation. There's actually quite a few. There's probably 8 or 10 different bays that you can get into along that shoreline that are safe harbors, and all of the rescue coordination centers knew that those boats were coming in there, and they had their big ribs and all that kind of stuff set up so that they can come and rescue them if they need it, right? So there's a big coordination piece, as opposed to just a solo sailor or a crewed boat coming into those areas, right? You still have to notify them and all that kind of stuff and do the procedures as you normally would. But because this was a race in such small boats, they knew that there's no propulsion other than electric, which is basically nothing. So they were ready to help out right away.
So down there was some of the toughest conditions that you saw off the boat?
I think honestly, we probably saw rougher conditions and bigger seas crossing the Atlantic than what they saw here, but it's very volatile here. So like they had big thunderstorms, like big lightning storms that they saw. The current that goes through here runs at sometimes 6 and 7 knots. So, and the problem is as well as the Drake Passage, the storms are rolling through here constantly. So every 3 or 4 days or 5 days, there's a big storm that rolls through the Southern Ocean, and some of them move up in this area. So it's a constant monitoring of the weather and picking those windows where you can get through. So they ended up picking really good windows, and it ended up not being an issue, you know, to a certain extent. I mean, there's lots of coastal stuff that happens, and weather effects that happen from other things, but they picked it pretty good. So I think the Atlantic crossing was actually rougher seas than that would have been, but this was the Intimidator. Everybody was talking about this. This was the biggest one next to coming across the Great Barrier Reef. This was another one, which ended up being very benign for them. Yeah, it all worked out. Because this one, it just seemed to work. You know, there's no big storms. I saw more storms going across the Atlantic than those guys have saw the whole way. Yeah, so it's just a timing thing, and yeah, it's very precarious. Yeah.
What were the storm tactics in place when you were crossing the North Atlantic from Nova Scotia? And also, what were you mentioned that the tropical depression showed 100 knots of wind.
Mm-hmm.
Did you counter that?
No, I was on the south side of it, so I encountered about 40 knots or so. Storm tactics would have been, it was basically the same for then as what we had in the race. I had kind of the boat outfitted already. So I had warp lines, 400 feet of 5/8 line on board with chain and a bridle system, and I could attach things to the end of it. Like, believe it or not, like 400 feet of line trailing behind your boat, that's only 2,000 pounds, will actually slow the boat down quite a bit. So I had that, plus I had this other sea anchor, which was, I forget the brand name. It was from New Zealand, and I bought it from New Zealand. Tried, tested sea anchor that I had as well. So that could be deployed off the bow or the stern, depending on the situation. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
You were without weather routing, you mentioned, for the rest of the journey. That was the only section you had. People who were watching the weather for you.
Yeah, on the North Atlantic, I had no weather routing at all. I couldn't see windy, predict wind, nothing like that. So, yeah. It's but there's lots of communication otherwise. Like once we're in the race and stuff like that, there's lots of modes of communication and being able to see where you are and check your chart against against windy and stuff like that. Yeah. One thing, has anybody ever sailed in the South Pacific before, specifically around Fiji? Yeah. So all the charting around Fiji and all those areas, even Tonga, the navionics is way off. Actually, our founder, I haven't said this to anybody yet, but our founder actually ran aground with his Beneteau 45. Yeah, Don McIntyre ran aground running at 6 knots. He says, I don't know what was going on. He says, the chart said this, and the big coral head was there, and it was supposed to be over there, and all this kind of stuff. Well, what they end up doing in that area, maybe those people that have sailed in those areas do it as well, is they overlay the charts, the navionics, with Google Earth. And the difference is staggering. Like I saw it on some people's chart plotters, and like there's reefs that come out and all kinds of stuff like that. And yeah, it's very intimidating in terms of the electronic piece. So as much as, weather routing and predict wind and all that kind of stuff, and navionics is good in the charts, the reality of it is different sometimes, even in today's day and age. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to take one more question, but before we answer that question, before he does, we're going to be meeting at the Muni afterwards at 747, like the airplane, Mill Street, Wayzata. So if anybody wants to join us there, we'll try to fit us all in.
Nice.
But all the other questions will have to wait till after.
Sounds like fun. Anybody have any more questions? Yes.
Was there any concern at any time for people when pirates?
So the question on piracy. The only, like for myself, because I only went to Fiji, right? So I only went halfway. The biggest concern for us was leaving Portugal and running down to Lanzarote because we're really close to Africa. Actually, I ended up with red sand from the Sahara Desert on the deck of my boat. That's how close we were because of the winds. So it's kind of ridiculous, stuff like that. But anyway, so piracy in that area is a concern. We had no problems. And then obviously across the Atlantic, there's, you know, within 200 miles of any shoreline is a concern because of the biggest concern, because of gasoline and the ability for pirates to actually get to your boat, rob you, and get back. So 200 miles is kind of the good threshold to be offshore. That's kind of what the plan is. So the next problem or issue that we had was in around Panama. So coming in and out of Panama is an issue, but also to get to Panama, it doesn't really show it well on this chart, but you have to come along the coast, and Panama Canal is actually, you have to go kind of north-south to get through the canal, and you have to go around Colombia. So we all talked about it, and you know, the race organizer talked about it, about piracy, and Colombia was another big one. So we all decided kind of collectively that we would stay 200 to 300 miles offshore, and which worked out fine. Nobody had any issues, and from what I understand, nobody's had any issues all the way along. There's big conversations. The next biggest area that was of concern is in this area here, just north of Australia, near Papua New Guinea, which I think that's Papua New Guinea, but in this area here of Indonesia, they actually delayed the tracker, the YB3 tracker, so that the pirates wouldn't be able to see where the boats actually were. They delayed it by like 10 hours or something like that, so that they wouldn't be able to pinpoint boats exactly, right? A lot of people in these areas, they'll shut their AIS off as well, because you know it's easy for a pirate person or whatever, people, to have all that technology on board and say, oh, look at this. And if you click back into my slideshow on marine traffic, your AIS gives you all the information on the boat. It tells you how long the boat is, where it's registered, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it'll tell you how the crew on board and all that kind of stuff. So if I was a pirate, I'd be like, oh, I think I want to take out a 50 or 60 foot boat that has, you know, a husband and wife on board. They must have some goods on board that I could use, you know, something like that. So yeah, the technology is great, but it's used for the wrong purposes. And in those areas were the concerns, mainly Indonesia, not even around, well, maybe a little bit around Durban and Cape Town. But they had such support in that area that they're pretty much covered in terms of, you know, others being aware of where they were. Yeah. Yeah, good question about the piracy. Thank you. Again, I appreciate everybody. Thank you.